Hi, my name is Dr. Elisa Kriegel, and this is Let's Talk About Sex Really, the podcast where I talk about all things sex, relationships in a very direct, honest, open way. No bullshit. This is the real deal. So today I am actually recording this podcast on Valentine's Day. And we all think hearts, flowers, candlelight dinners, right? All those grand gestures that people like to capture on Insta. Um, and I'm not talking about Valentine's today. I want to talk about romance. So today's podcast is Let's Talk About Romance, and not in the Hallmark card rom-commy kind of way that we have all been completely inundated with for most of our lives, but in a way that is more real and honest. And I really want to talk about romance in a way that can be incorporated into your relationship in the everyday, not the once a day, once a year holiday. And look, if you want to go out, if you are someone who loves celebrating Valentine's Day, by all means, go do that. If you like that big gesture once a year, great. I just don't want people to forget about the day to day, because when we're talking about a relationship, when we're talking about building relationships over time, when we are talking about having a kind of openness and connection in a relationship with great sex, with great conversation, with all of the things that people want. And really at the end of the day, what is it that we want? We all want love. We want to feel loved. We want to feel seen. We want to feel heard by our partner. We want a sense of connection. And I think we want a sense of validation. So the one big holiday a year doesn't last. And that's the problem. So what I want to look at today is some of my favorite time tested, and some are even lab tested, or supports information, like just things you can do um, to deepen your relationship, to be better at the small things in the day to day, to even be more thoughtful in your gift giving and what you consider gifts. So let's get started. What I want to start with is this idea, since I'm talking about kind of this, you know, one way of being Valentine's Day, type of romance. I want to really flip that on its head. And so, what I think is really important in a relationship is what I will call radical vulnerability. Being vulnerable is really the idea of like sharing this part of yourself. So, oftentimes when we think about a holiday like a Valentine's Day, or we think about our concepts in our head of romance, that I'm sure we all have our favorite rom-coms that we've loved and almost try to emulate or hope a partner will, say something. I mean, the one I can't stand actually is the Jerry Maguire, "You Complete Me." Well, that's a whole other issue we'll get into. We complete ourselves and other people can help us with that. But I think relationships are so much about the strength of a relationship is the strength that each person has who comes into the relationship. So but so many people have held on to these ideas. And oftentimes, when we try to then show up with these romantic gestures, we're really trying to show up with the best part. Like you and your partner are trying to show up with the best part of yourself, kind of that airbrushed, you know, photo ready, Insta ready part of yourself so the dinner looks just right and you look just right. And when we're talking about vulnerability, when we're talking about radical vulnerability, I'm talking about really stepping forward with all the parts of you, with the messy, flawed parts that you are so desperately trying to keep hidden, especially early in a relationship. But some people end up kind of cutting those parts off and trying to make them less throughout a relationship. And in doing so, in keeping those parts of yourself hidden, and in fear that if someone sees them, you won't be loved, then the relationship ends up existing in a lot of anxiety. And both people don't feel that permission to just show themselves as they are. So sharing those more messy, flawed, the parts of yourself that you think are unlovable is really what radical vulnerability is about. The idea that I want to give you as something you can play with, something you can do with your partner, because I really like having concrete tasks, skills, things you can do to incorporate these ideas into your life. And the one that I love and always come back to is something called 36 Questions to Fall in Love. It's an article that originally appeared in the New York Times, I think almost 10 years ago now. I believe it might have even been like in a modern love section. But it was basically an experiment that was played out in which originally it wasn't for couples. It was for two people, two strangers who didn't know each other to answer questions, which basically the questions became, started out more general and became more progressively intimate. And it was supposed to be done all at once, and it wasn't supposed to be questions that you put a lot of energy and thought into. And it was supposed to move quickly so that you can't overthink it, which is what happens sometimes. Definitely, I'm sure we all see that in relationships. We overthink everything. So, this idea of vulnerability, what the study's authors found is that the mutual vulnerability, because you take turns answering the questions, that mutual sharing of personal and important and deep thoughts and feelings and information is really the key they found. And I'll give you a quote. One key pattern associated with the development of a close relationship is sustained, escalating, reciprocal personal self-disclosure. So I love this. And if you have never seen it, it's really fun. I will put a link in the show notes. There's actually now a website that just is the 36 questions. It's called 36questionsinlove.com, and it's free. And it's the best way. Instead of going and finding the article and reading through each questions, it gives you the one question at a time, and you do it with a partner. You can also do this with a friend, a family member, anyone. But today we're talking about romance. So do it with a partner, do it with a lover, do it with someone who you would like to become a partner or a lover. Do it with someone you've been with for 10 years or 20 or 50 years. But give it a try. If you haven't seen it, it's a really fantastic, fun, interesting. You're going to find things even, and maybe even surprise yourself, and your partner will surprise you. So 36 questions to fall in love. So that's the first thing. It is a way to practice radical vulnerability. The next important piece that is not just about a once a year romance, but about the everyday. And I think that that's what I would call it's the small things, right? It's the small things that add up to feeling loved, to romance, to feeling seen, and to really building that connection, right? That real, authentic, deeper connection. So the other researchers that I really love are the Gottmans. John and Julie Gottman, they've been together forever, and they started something many decades ago called the Love Lab. And they would have couples come in to their lab and have a conversation. And what was really fascinating is that the Gottmans were able to predict. And over time, it turned out about 94% accuracy. They could predict from watching this. I don't remember if it was a 15, 20-minute conversation between a couple. I think maybe just 15 minutes. They could predict with 94% accuracy whether this couple would stay together. That's like amazing. So 15 minutes and they could tell you. And I think they did follow-ups with couples like 6 years later. And that's how they, this, and they, some with some people, they continued. The biggest factor in what they were really looking for in these conversations was something that they call watching to see if the couples turned toward their partner instead of turning away. And this idea of turning toward is basically what they coined as bids for connection. So, what is a bid for connection? We do this every day with our partners. We call their name from another room. We, ask them to join us to do something. And we're not just talking sexual things. We're not just talking romantic things. It's, hey, do you want to take a walk? Hey, whatever your passion is. If you are passionate about bird watching, this bird that's never been seen in the northern hemisphere is going to be in our area, and there's a half-hour window, and I'm really excited. Would you come with me to see it? Now, the turning toward means accepting the bid, means saying yes, means responding. Someone's reading an article and saying, oh, this is so interesting. And you say, oh, really? Like, what's it about? Or tell me more about that. That's an accepting the bid. As opposed to turning away, which is, I have no time. Oh, like your articles are always so annoying. Or can you tell me later? Or I'm busy. Or you're on your phone and you don't lift your head. There are so many ways to turn away from a bid. And when you accept your partner's bid for connection, they feel a sense of value. They feel a sense of caring. So oftentimes we are looking for the big, grand, airbrushed, beautiful gestures that are just right and just perfect. And we aren't realizing that what matters is the day-to-day small bids, and they're everywhere. So what I would say is start paying attention to what you might have just seen as, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. My partner just asked me this. They just said, oh, can you do the dishes? Whatever it is, start seeing these things as not requests or not demands, but bids for you to join with them and connect in a deeper way, for you to really feel that sense of connection, of care. It is very profound. It is so simple, right? A bid for the smallest thing. And the couples that stayed together more were the couples that did this on a regular daily basis, not once a year, not a couple of times. So what you can do is really start paying attention to when you maybe ask for bids and don't even realize it. Start paying attention to when your partner is asking, and start paying attention to maybe when you are turning away from them without even realizing it. and see what you can do to step up and turn more toward the bid, toward this bid for connection. It's interesting because when I think about Valentine's Day, one of the things that I've heard a lot from clients, from talking to people, is that there is almost this pressure on Valentine's Day. I'm doing these big gestures. I'm expected. There's this almost expectation we have to have sex. We have to look into each other's eyes. It all has to go perfectly. And that pressure actually makes things oftentimes go awry, not go so well. I have heard many a story of birthday celebrations or Valentine's Day celebrations where the expectations were set so high of what would come at the end of the evening and how you would connect. And what is really more interesting is that it's these day-to-day interactions and love and connection and sharing that, to quote another person who writes about relationships and love, Gary Chapman, who writes about the love languages, is what fills your love tank, right? As corny as that might sound, I think we all have a sense of when that tank is full and when it's feeling depleted. And when that tank feels more full, when we feel more of a sense of connection and more of a sense of love, then what happens is we really want to do more. It's not a should, it's not an obligation. You want to show up for your partner. You want to be physically intimate. You are excited to, right? In the words of Dan Savage, be GGG, right? Game, giving, and you want to do the things that your partner loves, whether that is in the bedroom or bird watching, whatever it is, you are going to be more game and more willing and more wanting of doing that. So, in the interest of filling your love tank, I'm going to turn to Gary Chapman because I think the 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 next really important thing you can do to keep romance strong and alive is learn to speak and translate and understand your partner's love language. So, love languages have been out for a long time. If you haven't heard of it, it is basically those 5 ways that Dr. Chapman figured out. We all have a way of giving love and wanting to give love and wanting to receive love. So it is words of affirmation. It is quality time. It is physical touch, acts of service, and gift giving or gift receiving, receiving gifts. So the idea here is that each of us in a partnership, each of us are just such different people. We have different personalities, different ways of doing things, and that includes we have different ways of loving, of showing love, and of wanting to receive love. And the way that Dr. Chapman came to this is I think he was a couples counselor, might have even been a pastor. And he met with a lot of couples and he kept hearing the same thing over and over again, which was basically, I don't feel loved. And the partner would be very confused because the partner would always say, I don't know what he wants. I don't know what she wants. I am doing everything I possibly can. And it's like never enough. So, what he realized is oftentimes people are speaking or giving or doing in ways that are just not not connecting. They're not feeling it. They're not hearing it. So if you are a words of affirmation person, you need to hear a lot of appreciation and how nice you look and how helpful you've been, and just all these positive, affirmative things about yourself. And your partner is someone who loves getting gifts. So every time they're out or away on business or think of something, it's in the form of a physical, concrete gift. And so these gifts are given and they are never quite appreciated. And so the gift giver feels very frustrated. I spent all this time thinking of the perfect gift, and the words of affirmation receiver is like, no, well, thank you, but it's not really working for me. I don't feel that. So the idea here is that you can start recognizing with each other, recognize for yourself what is your primary love language. For most people, there is one that stands out. Sometimes there's like one or two that stand out. And there's tests online, unfortunately. There used to be a lot of free tests, and what I've noticed is even Dr. Chapman has gotten a little bit greedy. So it's now, I think there's a Valentine special if you're listening to this around Valentine's Day, and it's like $20 to get some 15-page report. If that would be really helpful, go for it. Otherwise, you could probably have a pretty good sense for yourself of which of these 5 areas are the ones that really fill your tank, that really feed you. And the secret is not just letting the other person know, hey, this is my love language. You're not doing it. The secret is really making the effort to learn the other person's language. And some of that can be like ask, like what would feel like I say I love you all the time, and that doesn't seem to go anywhere. What would feel better for you? Let's say if it's physical touch, and physical touch isn't just sexual touch, although that's definitely can be a part of it, but you don't need to say anything. I would just really like a hug. I would really love us to have, there's another one of the Gottmans where they talk about the like 20-second kiss that like we're also used to, if you're in a long-term relationship, you get the peck on the cheek or the peck on the lips, but they talk about like really having like a long kiss, or a long hug, similar, the 20-second hug. So just really taking your time. So if someone's a physical touch person, then they're going to share that. They're going to ask for that. Sometimes your love languages don't quite fit easily, but it's like learning any language. Sometimes they're both romance languages, and you're like, oh yeah, I could pick up Spanish. I already know French. And sometimes it's a completely different language, and you're going to be struggling. But the idea is that you're trying. So one way to start might be to start thinking about gifts that you give, and I don't mean concrete gifts, but ways to give that are not just a concrete like chocolate flowers, but to actually give gifts of service. Hey, I did all the laundry for you. I know you're really busy. Or for someone who likes quality time. I'm a big quality time person. It's, hey, I carved out some time in my afternoon. The kids are going to be in school. I thought we could go for a nice walk and maybe pick up a bite to eat. That would be such a great gift for a quality of time person. So I want you to start, some of romance, the best kinds of romance are not just personal, but they're creative. You're putting in some effort, you're putting in some thought. So I want you to think about, can you change up what you offer your partner as gifts? So those are 3 different ways you can approach not just this Valentine's Day, but any day, any 365 days of the year. So practice being more radically vulnerable. Try the 36 questions to fall in love. Practice turning toward your partner's bids. Really see it as the small things that add up. And then try, even just, sometimes even just making the effort or talking about the effort you're making or what's working or sharing. I love the idea of shaping behavior. So if you have a goal, you you basically are giving encouragement each step of the way. So if a partner is, you can tell they're really trying hard to speak your language, encourage and celebrate the things that they are doing that feel really good and let them know. So, three ways to try to do romance a little differently. And as you start feeling a deeper sense of connection and a deeper sense of all the parts of you being seen and accepted and loved, then that is going to spark more romance and more intimacy and more desire than a box of chocolates once a year. So I'm going to put all of the links for these things in the show notes. I thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast. And I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully next week. I'm going to be doing this weekly. So that's my goal. So I wish you all a lot of deep connection and lots of bids getting accepted, and have a great day. Thanks for joining me. If you want to follow me, please like and follow me on my YouTube channel where the video is. If you're listening on the podcast, you can go to my Instagram, let's talk about sex _really, and follow me there, and more good things and more news to follow. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.